You know that feeling when you walk into a movie halfway through? You're kind of lost, right? Well, that's how a lot of us approach the story of the Bible. But what if I told you there's this one single theme that just unlocks the whole plot? It's this epic story told through all these ancient symbols, and it's all pointing to one just stunning conclusion. So let's hit rewind and press play from the very beginning.
At its very core, this whole thing is a story about finding a home. I mean, it taps into that ache we all have, doesn't it? That longing for a place where we truly belong, where we're safe, where we can just be, a place where we can finally actually rest. But right away, the story just throws a curveball at us. It asks this radical question that flips everything upside down. What if the home we're really looking for isn't some spot on a map, but a relationship, a presence? Seriously, getting this one little shift in perspective is the key to unlocking the entire story.
So that sets us off on our first big theme, this quest for home. You can pretty much look at the entire biblical narrative as humanity's grand, sweeping journey to find its way back into the presence of God.
Okay, what's so cool about this slide is how it maps out this journey. The Bible shows history as this repeating pattern, right? It's always this movement out of chaos and death, what the text calls Sheol, which is basically the realm of the dead, and then this climb, this ascent up God's holy mountain towards life. Whether it's Eden or Sinai or Zion, the goal is always the same: get closer to God.
And this whole journey creates this central question of the entire story. It was actually a question they would sing in their worship services. Who shall ascend the mountain of Yahweh? Now, Yahweh, that's the personal name for God in the Old Testament. So what they're really asking is, who's good enough? Who is clean enough to walk right into the presence of God and not be, well, destroyed? The rest of the story is basically one long answer to this one critical question.
So, how did God even start to answer that question? Well, that brings us to his first big move. In this next section, we're going to look at what you could call God's divine blueprint, a real physical system he set up to create a pathway for people to get to him. And this blueprint, which we call the Levitical System, named after the tribe of Levi, the priests, it was just beautifully designed around three main pillars. First up, a covenant. This was the contract, the thing that officially created the relationship. Second, a place, the tabernacle, which was this tangible promise from God that, yes, I will live right here among you. And third, a priesthood. These were the designated mediators, the go-betweens, who made sure there was a safe and orderly way into God's holy presence. Now, the New Testament has a special name for this whole system. It calls it the shadow. And that doesn't mean it was fake or just pretend. I mean, think about it. A shadow is a real thing, right? But the whole point of a shadow is that it proves something bigger, something more substantial is casting it. This system was a real working model, but it was always pointing toward the final building. It was the blueprint, not the finished product. And this is where the plot really thickens. Because as brilliant as this blueprint was, it was designed with intentional limits. So in section 3, we're going to see how this system with limits wasn't actually meant to be the final answer, but was designed to make everyone hungry for something more. The first limit was built right into its mechanics. The book of Hebrews makes this super clear. All those animal sacrifices, they could make things clean on the outside, but they couldn't actually fix the root of the problem, the human heart, the conscience. In fact, the fact that they had to be repeated year after year wasn't a sign of success. It was a constant, nagging reminder that the problem wasn't really truly solved. And this just perfectly illustrates its biggest limitation. You see, the whole sacrificial system was for unintentional sins, for our slip-ups and mistakes. But for those times of deliberate, willful rebellion, what the text calls sinning with a high hand, the system had nothing. No sacrifice, no ritual. It had no answer for the deepest, darkest problem of the human heart. So here's the kicker. The system was designed to point beyond itself, to make you crave something better. The author of Hebrews asks this really sharp question, basically saying, hey, look, if this old way was perfect, why would the scriptures even talk about a new kind of priest coming? The blueprint itself had all these clues that it wasn't the final story, building up this massive anticipation for a better way. And finally, all that anticipation is met. Welcome to section 4, the shadow meets reality. This is the moment where all those symbols, all those rituals, finally find their true meaning. Just look at this comparison. It's a perfect one-for-one payoff. First, the endless, repetitive animal sacrifices, they were pointing to his one, perfect, once and for all sacrifice. Second, the temporary human priests who would eventually die, they pointed to Christ as the eternal high priest. And third, the physical temple, made of stone and gold, it pointed to Christ himself as the true meeting place between God and humanity. This slide just pulls it all together so beautifully. And it's not just those three big things, it's everything. You can see here how the entire map of the Old Covenant, every single ritual, every part, every piece of furniture in the temple, it was all a detailed sneak peek. It all converges and finds its ultimate meaning in the person and work of Christ. The shadow finally gives way to the real thing. And the result is, well, it's just breathtaking. This verse tells us that through his own sacrifice, Christ literally tore the veil, that massive, heavy curtain that separated a holy God from sinful people. He didn't just patch up the old path, he blasted open a completely new and living way, straight into God's presence. The door was thrown wide open for everyone. But the story doesn't end there. Nope. It takes one more incredible, stunning turn. And that brings us to our final section. The temple is a people. The very idea of where God lives on earth gets completely redefined. I mean, just look at this visual shift. It is a total paradigm change. In the old system, the fire of God's presence would come down on this external stone altar. But now, through the Holy Spirit, that same fire of God's presence comes to live inside his people. The location of the temple literally moves from a building to a body, a whole community of people. So what does this new temple look like? Well, for starters, it's called a household, not just a house. It's all about relationships. It's built with what the Apostle Peter calls living stones. That's you and me, all joined together with Christ as the main cornerstone holding it all together. This means God's presence now lives within his people, not just among them. It's a crazy shift in spiritual geography. And with that, the huge question that started this entire journey finally gets its answer. Who shall ascend the mountain of YSWH? The answer is anyone and everyone who is united to Christ. Through him, the way is open, the gap is closed, and that ancient quest for home is finally complete. So this leaves us with one last, really deep thought to chew on. If the temple of the living God isn't a building anymore, but a community of people, a household made of living stones, how in the world does that change the way we see and the way we treat each other every single day?